Hey everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. This is the first in the meditation series, and most of these are going to be about different kinds of meditation and how they work and what they're good for and things of that nature. But this one's going to be a little different. This is just sort of me talking about what meditation is and why you should try it and so on. And it's very unfortunate. Meditation in the West currently, it has these connotations to it. Like, you either picture some weird hippy dippy woo woo Google executive who, goes on retreats and says namaste for a couple of days, or, somebody sitting on a mountaintop, an ascetic. And it's unfortunate, really, because one, meditation's been commonplace for every part of the world, really, for a long time. It's associated with Christian mystics, it's associated with Buddhists and Hindus, it's associated with Taoists, it's associated with most walks of life. I don't think there's a single culture that exists that doesn't have some form of it or another, but because of pop culture and because of its waning in popularity in the West over a period of centuries, mostly because of the Enlightenment, it's created a vastly different picture of it. And one way to look at it, this is just my opinion, but if you look at Hinduism, if you look at thousands of years of history, including a lot of meditation, most forms of meditation nowadays stem from the Hindu-Buddhist model, the Indian model, in other words. They didn't have a word for it. It was just consciousness training or mental training, and that makes sense. I mean, think about the word exercise. That's a broad term. Exercise doesn't mean powerlifting. It doesn't mean high endurance interval training, or however that is pronounced or spelled. It doesn't mean Olympic training. It just means activity to improve your body, period. There are morbidly obese people who are bedridden, who all they can do is clap their hands, who are watching Richard Simmons, and they're exercising. It doesn't have that strange stigma where it has to be, on the extreme end of something. Well, I think meditation needs to be normalized much in the same way. It's not this extreme form of rigorous mental asceticism. It's mental training. It's consciousness training. It's mind training. So, what really is happening when people meditate? Well, if you think about it, your mind, your whole mind, not what you just think of cognitively, it's bombarded by sensory information all day, every day, all day, every day. And most of that gets filtered out, and your subconscious deals with it. So, as you go about your day, you are bombarded by sensory information, sights, smells, sounds, textures, etc. And those lead to interpretations, which lead to thoughts, which lead to more thoughts, which lead to more thoughts, memories, emotional cues, things, just so many complicated things. A lot of times people will have what they think of as just a regular standard day, and then something just makes them upset. And a lot of times that's because of all these little subconscious cues. They smelled something. Oh man, not too long ago, for example, it was remarkable. I was walking through a store, an arts and crafts store, and I smelled chalk for the first time in a long time. And just immediately, I was transported back to the third grade. Like, I could almost taste that horrible rectangular pizza that they serve like every Wednesday or whatever in public schools. It was amazing how that happened. And that all stemmed from a series of interpretations of sensory data that I was being bombarded with. But one thing stood out. It was the aroma of that chalk that led to sort of a cascade of thoughts. And this wasn't a negative thing, obviously, but it showcases how much we use our mind every day, every moment. And what meditation does is it filters that out so that parts of the mind that are normally very, very active can take a break and become less active. And parts of the mind that are less active can now become more active. And the end results can be remarkable. An increased sense of well-being, an increased sense of awareness and alertness, kind of like what happens when people go on vacation. They change their scenery, they change their routine, and then the next thing you know, they're just appreciating things more. They're more aware of the good things in their life. You see something similar also with people when they find out that they're going to die. All of a sudden their priorities become more on par with what they actually want rather than just what they think that other people expect from them. Well, meditation can do that, and it can do even more. There have been studies that showcase that and I recommend 20 minutes morning and evening. That's just me. But there have been studies that showcase that just 12 minutes a day, 12 minutes, that's nothing. It's a little fragment of your day, can improve, or increase rather, brain density by 2%. Now that might not seem like much, and this is one of those facts that it sounds fake, it sounds like totally bogus. There are more connections between your neurons than there are stars in the universe. I know that sounds completely nuts. No, he's making that up. It's kind of like that thing about the guy who just recently said that every single COVID virus can fit in a Coke can in the world. And it's no, that can't be the case. But then you actually think about how small it is. Well, similarly, you think about the size of the connection between a neuron, not a neuron itself, just the little bridges. And you consider how many neurons people have. We have more connections in our noggins than there are stars in the universe. Increasing that number by 2%, increasing that density by 2% is an extraordinary amount. Why? I would even argue that that's the difference between a simpleton and a genius. Not to say that that's purely based on cognitive function. There's so many factors at play. I'm just pointing out that 2% is a massive amount when you're dealing with big numbers like that. It's kind of like when people with multi-million-dollar amounts, they invest their money, and it's he only got a return of 3%. He could retire on a return of 3% if you're dealing with those kinds of numbers, right? Well, similarly, meditation can do that for the mind. So, are there any downsides? Yeah, there actually are. And this is why I personally think if you can, just like with exercise, you can do a push-up wrong. You can do a push-up wrong and mess your back up and mess your pecs up and just not improve yourself. Similarly, there are people who, because you're allowing your subconscious to rest, and certain things will bubble to the surface, although meditation for the most part is about just acknowledging and letting those thoughts be, sometimes those gates can open too quickly and people are faced with very negative things. And if you don't learn how to meditate properly, if you're just winging it based on a YouTube tutorial or a BitChute tutorial, you might run into some trouble and you might do more harm than good. So what I most recommend is, if you can, and you could probably find one for free in your area, would be to attend via Zoom if you have to be distant for whatever reason. Just some sort of guided meditation by somebody who knows what they're doing. Similarly, I encourage people, if they go to the gym for the first time, don't let your ego get in the way and learn how to actually do those movements with help. You can continually mess up. There was a time recently where I was not using the proper form for deadlifting, and somebody noticed, and I asked their advice on it because I knew from their expression, I was like, oh, I've somehow slipped up. And it wasn't that I didn't originally know the right form, but over time, mistakes that I was making were continuing. It was like playing telephone with myself, and I wasn't engaging in the proper form. So similarly, meditation can be profoundly more enriching and rewarding when you do it with other people anyway, for reasons I can't really explain, but also it'll help you understand how properly. And I also recommend, like with exercise, I mentioned in the self-improvement general, pick a form of meditation and stick with it. This series is going to expound on different kinds and their benefits, but pick one and stick with it for at least a month or two, bare minimum, to see how you feel, to see how it's affecting you. If you play around with it, just like a lot of people play around with physical exercises, you're not really going to get any benefits. At that point, you're just, playing some sort of weird, restless game, and it's the same thing with meditation. So, I'm gonna be talking more about all sorts of different types in the near future. But as for me, for example, there are only 2 types that I actually engage in regularly, and one that I engage in daily. So and this is something I've been doing a long time. So, bottom line, you don't need to be doing every single type that I'm going to mention on a regular basis, and you certainly don't need to just swap them out day by day or week by week. But the big thing to take home here is, contrary to what a lot of woo-woo Google exec types, the stereotype of people who encourage people to meditate. One, I don't think you need an app. Two, I don't think you need any secondary devices or anything like that. It's free. That's one of the reasons also to do it, by the way. It's one of the easiest things. I can't think of anything else that you can do aside from body weight exercises that you don't need another person with. You don't need any kind of equipment or any kind of tools or anything of the sort, except just 10 to 20 minutes of free time. That's it. That's all you need. You don't need a mat. You don't need a special cushion. You can do this on your couch, alone, nobody around, 10 to 20 minutes. That's all you need. It's that easy. But contrary to what those types say, the Google exec types, the woo-woo types, there is a danger to it. And so it's not something that you should just take lightly and just, you hear that. Just everybody should meditate. Everybody just do it. Just do it. Just sit down. Clear your mind of thoughts. It's fine. Just do it. Read a book about it and just get over it. No, it is something like exercise where you can do things the wrong way and you can cause more harm than good. I still think every single person in the world would benefit from it. I don't think there's a single person who would not benefit from meditation, provided they do it regularly, like exercise, and they do it properly. You wouldn't remember that obese person I mentioned earlier? Should they just get up on a Peloton and just hammer it out for high intensity for so long? No, they should not. They should do the clapping thing like Richard Simmons taught them, until they get to a point where they can do more. Similarly with meditation, you don't just jump into it without any idea what you're doing, and you also don't do it to a point where you're uncomfortable. If your legs go numb, I heard a horror story not too long ago about this. There was a guy who was just so keen on it, like, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to show myself discipline, I'm going to basically reach enlightenment today. And his legs went numb because he was sitting improperly, and he ignored that because, it was about self-control and bottom line, he went to the hospital because he ended up damaging his legs from not letting the blood go to them properly. You're not supposed to be uncomfortable when you're meditating. If thoughts are making you uncomfortable, you should not think them. You should stop. And if you're physically uncomfortable, you should change positions. You're not, again, that image of a guy on a mountaintop in the storm and the rain, etc. That's a fictional portrayal that Hollywood has encouraged us to think of, and it's a vastly different thing. It's a form of self-improvement, and it's a really great thing you can do for yourself, provided you know what you're doing. And the best way to know what you're doing is to have someone teach you. So that's all for this one. Next time I'll be talking about mindfulness meditation, which includes body scan meditation. Like, share, subscribe, keep asking questions. Bye.